the blood of the Lamb. I am redeemed.
But then it reminded me of a story of Moses. In the book of Exodus chapter 7, God began to speak to Moses. And see, God told Moses, I want to use you to set my people free. But see, Moses lacked so much confidence. Moses was worried about what people would think. If he really heard from God, if really what he was saying was from God. And so Moses began to talk to God and say, God, listen, I know you just said you want me to do this, but God, I don't think I can do this. You're going to have to find somebody else because I don't think I'm good enough for this. So I'm asking you a question. What is your Pharaoh? What is trying to rule and reign in your life? Because God is telling you right now, He's made you and built you to handle this. What is that Pharaoh that's trying to keep you in bondage? Is it your mindset? Is it financial lack? Is it feeling like you're never enough? What is your Pharaoh? Because God wants to tell you right now, from this day forward, you have to understand who you are. Let me help you understand this. If Moses wouldn't have understood the power that is in God, that is in him, he wouldn't have been able to do those things. But see, Moses did understand one thing, that even though he felt less than, even though he felt like he couldn't do it, that God had all power. And the Bible tells me, greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. But understand, you have to know who you are. Don't allow the enemy to tell you any longer that you can't do it. Don't allow the enemy to say anything different than what God says. You have to believe what God says. See, the enemy is an opposer. He's not going to tell you what God says. So you have to get to a point where you only depend on God. You don't depend on your feelings anymore. You don't depend on what you can do in your own power. But what does your God say? Know your God. What does he say about you?
Now you need to understand that pharaohs come in different forms. For some, it's family problems. Others, it's hopelessness and a discouraged spirit. For others, it's health problems and fear. But let me tell you that there is no pharaoh too big. No giant too strong for you as a child of God. I need you to take this on. Do not be afraid. Don't allow the enemy to keep you in the confinement of fear. F-E-A-R is nothing more than false evidence appearing real. It's a trick that the enemy will use. The second thing is that you have to stand by faith before you can walk by faith. Isaiah 40:31, but they will wait upon the Lord, shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. With waiting comes renewed faith. With waiting comes renewed strength. With waiting comes renewed zeal. So basically, everything you need to defeat the enemy.
So now Moses understands who he is. And he understands the great power of God that lives inside of him. And so he goes to Pharaoh. And he tells Pharaoh, God said, let my people go. And after some times of releasing plague after plague after plague on Pharaoh, he agrees to do exactly what Moses requested. So the children of God begin to gather things together. They go to the Egyptians, they give them cattle, they give them riches, they give them wealth, and they leave. Headed toward the wilderness, Pharaoh changes his mind and sends his greatest army after Moses and the people of God. And see, that's how it is sometimes in life. When you think you're just free of something, you think you've just gotten out of something, and then it begins to rain in your life. And you're like, God, I know you told me to do this. I know you freed me from this, but why is this coming after me again? Why am I facing this again? But understand, if God brought you there, he's going to take you through that. So he tells Moses, listen, raise your hands. And they're at the Red Sea at this time. So he tells them, raise his hands, and the river begins to split. And so Moses and the people of God cross through. See, something that was meant to drown in the natural, they can walk through it because of the power of God. So they get on the other side, and Pharaoh's army starts to cross. And then Moses closes his hands, and they all drown. But yet when they get into the wilderness, after some time, the people begin to complain and say, you know what, we had it better in bondage. We were provided for in bondage. And I want you to think about that, your bondage being whatever it is. I'm going to